Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first lesson in our Android development with Kotlin. My name is Miss Monthe, and I'll be your instructor here on Everything Anything Computing. This is a channel where we explore all things tech, one concept at a time. In this course, we're going to take an exciting journey together. You'll learn how to build Android applications from scratch using Kotlin language, one of the most modern, concise, and powerful programming languages available today. So whether you're a complete beginner or somebody with a bit of coding experience, this course is designed to give you the skills and the confidence to build real-world mobile applications. So grab your laptop, let's get comfortable, and we're going to dive right into it. First of all, you'll be able to build a variety of Android applications using Kotlin. I would like my students to be able, by the end of my course, to have the confidence to say that I can actually build an app for a specific problem or solution. So the idea here is we're using this programming language to actually develop the application. Just like English speaking or French speaking people, for you to be able to communicate, you need to understand that language. So it's the same thing with Android development, or it's the same thing with application development. So for you to be able to develop this application using your computers, you need to be able to understand this language that is going to communicate with your computer and give us an output. And the output is the application. I just don't want you to develop this application. I want you to understand that there are best practices within the community or within the mobile development that one has to follow for them to actually give us the best solution that can be able to be maintainable, that can allow plugin of other team members, and also can allow scalability and so on and so forth. Finally, I want you to be able to explore resources that will help you continue learning even after the course ends. So there is so much, there's pool of information within the internet. There's documentation on Kotlin language, and I will give you some of these resources that you can be able to follow for you to benefit and also to grow even outside the course. Let's start with a big question. Why learn mobile development? So currently, there are over 6 billion smartphone users around the world today. 6 billion. That's billions of people accessing the internet through mobile applications every day. From social media to online shopping, mobile apps are now the primary way people engage with digital services. And because of this, there's a huge demand for mobile developers in the job market. Every big tech needs mobile developers because they understand that the best way or the easiest way that people engage with digital services is through mobile applications. So for them to create this mobile application so that people can access the digital services, they need you. So the people who are actually trying to learn and to become mobile developers. So whether you're interested in working for a tech company that is a startup or even launching your own app, the skills you'll gain here are highly valuable. Even better, mobile development allows you to make a real-world impact. You can build apps that solve everyday problems in areas like health, education, transport, finance, and more. So what are the more reasons to learn mobile development? So mobile development is also a platform for innovation. You can integrate your apps with AI, IoT devices, augmented and virtual reality, and cloud services. You also gain versatile skill sets, including UI, UX design, working with the APIs, managing database and local storages, optimizing app performances. And if you're interested in entrepreneurship, mobile apps are great ways to launch your own startups. You can publish app directly to the Google Play Store and reach users worldwide. So really, all you need is a laptop, you need an IDE, and you need the skill set. That is, you need the language. Once you get that, you can create anything. So Android is an open source mobile operating system developed by Google. It powers over 70% of smartphones worldwide, making it the most widely used mobile operating system. Apps on Android are built using languages like Kotlin and Java. And Android isn't just for phones, it runs on tablets, smartphones, smartwatches, TVs, and even cars. So when you learn Android development, you are not just targeting one device, you're learning to build across a whole ecosystem. Now let's talk about Kotlin, the language we'll be using throughout this course. As I mentioned, you want to create an application using your device, that is your computer or machine. You will need a language to communicate to the machine and tell it that this is the output I want to give once you put in an input. So it's the same way as I said, English speaking, French speaking is the same thing. When you want to communicate, you need to understand the language, you need to understand the vocabularies, the verbs, the vowels, the numbers, and so on and so forth. And once you do that, you can easily propagate your information and say what you actually want to say. The same thing with Kotlin. This is that language that we would use to actually come up with the different application for Android. So Kotlin is a modern programming language that's officially supported by Google for Android development. It's simple, it's safe, and it's powerful. It was designed to work well with Java and make developers' life easier. It supports both object-oriented and functional programming styles and run on the Java virtual machine. It's also great for backend development, web application, and many more. So learning Kotlin opens a lot of doors beyond just mobile development. Here's why Kotlin is a smart choice for Android development. It has a concise syntax. So syntax basically is how you are writing your actual code, the rules or the guidelines in coming up with that language. So it's very concise, it's very clear. You write less code to get more done, And then it has null safety. It prevents app crashing due to missing data. So as you know, the idea of programming is mostly what I usually like to emphasize to my students is that the building blocks of programming, and when you're starting to do programming, is understanding that everything you do is because you want to either store data, manipulate data, transfer data, propagate data, visualize data, and so on and so forth. So if you come up with that language, and you're giving it a memory or allocation, you're telling your compiler, give me a memory allocation, and you're not putting anything in that memory allocation, so there's a missing value, normally what happens, your system crashes. But there's a safety feature that Kotlin has, which is null safety, that now prevents app crashing due to missing data. So it will always forces to check if there's missing data. And if there's actually missing data, then something else will happen. So meaning your application will go on running because you do not have memory that has missing data. It's always occupied, or if it is not occupied, something else happens. And then it offers the idea of interoperability. So because it runs on JVM, and normally what happens is when you have your Kotlin class files, they're usually broken down into Java bytecodes. So because of that, these Java bytecodes can run on JVM, and so the compiler usually breaks them into Java bytecodes. So and then they can run on JVM, so the Java virtual machines, making it work seamlessly with Java, because Java bytecode also Java has Java bytecode, so you can use both in the same project. And then there is Koretinize, which it makes it easy to manage tasks like downloading or loading data in the background. We'll learn that later on under task management and architecture with persistence. And then there's Google support. So Kotlin is now Google's preferred language for Android development. So every time you want to pick a language, look, do they have support from the actual creators of that ecosystem? So in this case, the ecosystem is Android, and Google actually supports Kotlin for Android. So you definitely know if there's any changes from the main stakeholders. If there's any changes, then Kotlin will be the first one to experience those changes. So that's why maybe it's better when you pick a language that is fully supported by the stakeholders for the ecosystem. Another thing that Kotlin has is something called the idiomatic feature when coming up with your language. So throughout this course, you learn how to write idiomatic Kotlin. That means using the language in the cleanest, most efficient way, not just translating Java code into Kotlin. So idiomatic way is usually you're writing less code to achieve more, as I mentioned before. You don't have to, I will show you an example when we get there, but you don't have to write the same way you were writing it in Java. So as we go along, I'll point out tips and examples that help you write more elegant modern code. So how is our course structure like? Let me walk you through how the course is organized. The course itself is divided into 4 units and it's spread out across 13 lessons. Yeah. We have the first unit, which is basically getting started with Kotlin, just the basics of Kotlin. And that is mostly variables, so the memory allocations, the functions, the classes, the objects, arrays and lists, null safety, and so on and so forth. And then unit 2 is on introduction to Android, which is going to last around 3 weeks. So this is a whole self-paced course and it's on YouTube. You can always watch it anytime you want. You can self-pace yourself. You can always pause when you feel like you're being overwhelmed or there's too much information. But I'd usually like to give my student a sense of where, or a sense of direction of where we're actually going, so that when they actually pause, they know how long they would need to actually complete your course. So introduction to Android, that is unit 2, we'll build our first application and explore layouts, views, navigation. We will use, there are certain applications that are quite different that we'll try and come up with. But what I usually like to do with my students is, as we go along, we look for a problem together. And then once we get that problem, we use that problem to build our solution all the way while learning the different concepts. So by the end of the course, you have a fully functional solution based on the problem that you had decided on when you started. Yeah, so I would like you to post problems in the comment section and then we can decide on one and then we can go with that. So when I was teaching physical classes to my students, we used a rental management system where I explained the different variables using rental management system. So if I don't get comments, that's what we're going to go with. But you can always post your problems in the comment section and then maybe in the next one, I'll try teach my students using that problem and coming up with a solution for that problem. So that's unit 2. Unit 3 is now where we're going to get into the app architecture. Now, this is where the heavy part is. So unit 2 is basically you just understanding how do you put the different views and components on your application and so on and so forth. But unit 3 is app architecture. It's how you're going to organize your code, how you're going to do things like separations of concerns, how you're going to do the app architecture for UI layer and the app architecture for persistence. So data persistence, yeah. So this is the heart of the course. You learn about app architecture, data persistence, working with the internet and background tasks. And then finally, we will do app design. So we'll wrap up by looking at how to design beautiful and user-friendly interfaces. Sometimes I can interchange these courses based on where we are. We can have app design before unit 3 and then unit 3 later on. But depending on how we're going to go with the course, you'll follow along. So by the end of this course, you'll have built several projects and gained real hands-on experience. What do you need to start? When learning about the basics, we are going to use an IDE called the IntelliJ IDEA. It's community edition, which is free. So what happens with this is it avoids the heaviness of Android Studio. So we will use Android Studio now when we get into the idea of XML layouts and actually building our first application. But before we get to that, when we're just looking at the basics, that is variables, when you're looking at when we're looking at classes, when you're looking at lists and arrays, we're going to use IntelliJ IDEA, where basically we will be seeing the output on the console when we do an input and just learning the structure and semantics and syntaxes of our language. And then finally, you will need Android Studio, as I say. So Android Studio is the official tool by Google for Android development. It combines everything you need: the color editor, emulator, layout designs, and Kotlin support. The IDE is less heavy and it's lightweight, and it still allows you to learn about the basics of Kotlin. But Android Studio now is the heavy bit now, where you get everything and you can emulate your applications as you go on. I'll also be sharing helpful Kotlin resources throughout the course, including the Kotlin language documentation. If you need clarification, if you need to check into something more, go to the Kotlin language documentation. And then I'll do the Kotlin commands. Those are just small practices exercise. Kotlin by example, annotated sample example, and then Kotlin coding conventions for written, clean code, readable code. I will also post my GitHub. So as I mentioned, we're going to find a problem and come up with the solution for that problem. So what happens is I will post my GitHub so that you can also clone the repository and follow along with me. That's it for lesson 1, just basic introduction as I prepare to get you into now building your first application in Kotlin language for mobile Android development. In our next session, we'll install the tools you need and write your first Kotlin program together. If you enjoyed this lesson, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming lesson. Thank you for joining me on Everything Anything Computing. I'm Miss Monthe, and I'll see you in lesson 2. Bye now. Au revoir.